You're listening to another Ambitious Entrepreneur Network.com podcast. The voice for entrepreneurs and small business. Now, onto the show.
You're listening to the award-winning podcast, The Ambitious Entrepreneur Show, featuring business experts, industry disruptors, game changers, and thought leaders to help you navigate a constantly changing marketplace. Want to build a successful business and become known as an influential voice in your industry? The Ambitious Entrepreneur Show will show you how. Now, over to your host, Anne-Marie Cross.
And welcome to another episode of the Ambitious Entrepreneur Show. This is episode 219, and yes, I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross, the podcasting queen. Now, are you considering building products? Because according to my guest, for every idea you want to test, you need to ask yourself, how can I make this small? Joining me on today's show is Joe Cottalese. Joe's first professional job involved playing video games all day. I think that is every, young boy's dream to do that. Now, after early signs of brain rot, he decided to teach himself how to write software. His entire career is characterized by this why not attitude. I like that kind of attitude. Why not? And Joe's currently the founder of Sherry, a social media marketing tool that adds ROI to curated content. Now, on today's show, what Joe is going to share is how to find your value proposition quickly by going through a couple of simple exercises that he's going to share with us today. He's also going to share more about 2 tools that'll help you quickly assess your business model before you begin building your products, because I'm sure that can be quite expensive only to realize that it's not going to pan out, as well as learning how we can apply lean principles to our business. Welcome to the show, Joe.
Thanks. It's great to be here, Anne-Marie.
Your career as a, let me see, can you still hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Oh, fantastic. That's all right. We just had a change in sound, so wanted to make a double check. All right, fantastic. Just going back to your introduction here, your first job involved playing video games all day. I mean, amazing. How did you do that? How long did you do that for?
So it's a great story, and I think it kind of fits in with what you said about my can do or my why not attitude. Yes. I was very early in my career. I was working like part-time while I was going to school at Circuit City, which is an electronics store in the area, and I saw an ad in the newspaper of all things for a job posting for a customer service position at this company called Ensoniq that I knew about. It was a local technology company that made synthesizers. Long story short, I went on the interview and I didn't get the job. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I felt really bad. I'm like, I should have got that job. I was 21 at the time. And I called the person that interviewed me up and I said, hey, I really want to learn from the team and what I need to do to, be better so that the next time I interview for a job like this, I get it. What if I came in and worked for nothing? Mm-hmm. And the guy was kind of taken aback by it. And he said, well, let me call you back. So he called me back and he said, well, how about this? He's like, do you like video games? I was like, of course I like video games. I'm, 21-year-old guy. Mm-hmm. And he's like, well, what if we have you come in and play test video games for us? And, we can't have you, work for free. So how about we pay you, I don't know, I forget what it was, $15 an hour or something like that. So it was like, yeah, win-win. So, but it sounds way more glamorous than it was. So the company was making these. So this was, I'm dating myself a little bit, but this was back in the early 90s. When you bought a computer, it typically didn't have sound in it. So you had to buy this like add-on card that you plugged into the computer. So we were making this product that was compatible with all the different games that were on the market. And I had to play through the game to make sure the sound worked right. And then when it didn't, I had to write down exactly what I did to get to that point in the game and then recreate it for the engineer. So it sounds super glamorous. I'm playing video games all day, but it was pretty challenging. But I got really good.
Yeah, amazing. And, through that, of course, you recognize, was it over a period of time that you were networking and obviously spending time in that business that you recognized that you had a passion or a skill to be able to, kind of develop software then? What was the transition from playing games to then writing software?
It was, my father and mother, basically kickstarted my love of computers. They bought me a Commodore VIC-20 computer back in 1981. And I was in fourth grade, I think. I was 10 or 11 when I got this computer. And I was always kind of tooling around with it, but didn't really know that could be a potential career path for me. And I was surrounded by all these amazing people. Actually, the founders of Ensoniq were the people that created the Commodore VIC-20 computer. So I was like, for me, it would be like going to work at, for somebody that's an Apple fan, going to work at Apple and working with Steve Jobs. And I was surrounded by this amazingly talented group of engineers. And, they basically gave me my shot. I said, I want to do this. And I would say it was probably within 6 months of being there, maybe not even that long, that I began transitioning. They started giving me software projects to pick up, and I just basically ran with it.
Fantastic. Because often opportunities are there right in front of us. We just need to take advantage of those, and you certainly have. And thank goodness, and now you're here today sharing more. Talk a little bit about finding our value proposition quickly. This can be really difficult for many people, men and women. You've got a couple of exercises that you obviously have run through and obviously use on a regular basis. Share more about these exercises.
Yeah. So when you're building a product, so one of my mentors at a startup, I was still doing engineering. I was actually in engineering management. We were working on this product, and I wanted to make all of these changes to the product, and we were venture backed, but we weren't revenue positive. And he said to me, you could, basically I wanted to like gut all of the code and like rewrite, have the team rewrite pieces of it. And he's like, you could spend all the time you want, building the perfectly engineered solution, but until you get it out in front of your customers, you don't know what you have. And you could get to, you could spend all this time doing it, and we could spend all this money building it and get to a point where we've run out of money before we've really had a chance to validate, the idea. And I mean, this was, going back 10 years, you didn't really hear the concept of like lean software development and, the lean startup movement didn't exist yet, but that was a lesson that I really took to heart. So I had this, I always kind of had this philosophy of like, sprinting to 1.0, trying to get as quickly as possible something in front of your customers so that you could begin identifying, whether or not you had a good product market fit. So, over the course of a number of years, like, the lean startup movement became popular, and that's a great book. If you haven't recommended it to your audience, you should definitely throw it in the show notes. So the idea is, basically to figure out how to get to start with the sort of the core of the idea. And you've probably heard people talk about the minimum viable product, the MVP concept. Yes. And I think that actually often gets misunderstood. A lot of, I've heard a lot of people talk about the MVP as this, let's get something out quick and then we'll go do something else. But it's really, it's a little more nuanced than that. So the concept of the MVP is, figure out how to take the essence of the thing you want to build and come up with a way to test it. So I don't, have you ever been in a situation where it's like you have this giant idea and you're not sure where you want to take it? So, how have you like gone through the process of like whittling it down to like the core thing?
Oh, I absolutely have. And I've had some products that have just, and I've thought this is going to be the next best thing, and it was the next best flop. So yeah, certainly been, and it has really been trial and error a lot of times. So yeah.
Yeah. And it is often trial and error. And, I tell people, so, I moved from engineering into product management. And I often tell people that product management is about mitigating risk, because a lot of times you're taking a stab in the dark about the thing that you're building. You don't know what people want. Yes. So you have to mitigate risk. So how do you do that? So you start with this you take an idea and you kind of boil it down to what's called a verifiable hypothesis. Come up with some hypothesis, and then figure out what the criteria is that you can use to measure whether or not that thing was, you've proven that hypothesis. And that really is the concept of the MVP. Figure out what the essence is that you want to, a thing you want to test. So, for example, you were saying you've built a lot of products and you've some of them have flopped. Well, one thing that you can do is, ask yourself, is this the smallest thing that I can build? So if you're thinking about doing a course, right, you could develop the whole course and you could spend weeks and weeks and weeks doing it. But then at the end, you're not sure if your customers wanted it.
Yes.
So, here's something that you could try. You could just put up a landing page advertising the course with an email sign-up form and just see if people are interested. Because the thing that's cool about that is, you can, I'm sure you've kind of sat in front of the blank page and tried to figure out how to position your offering, right? That's, that's a hard problem. And, if you start with, just a landing page, then you can kind of dial into, the right way to phrase your offering and see if people are even interested. And then from there, once you've run that test, you've verified, okay, people have some amount of interest in this. What's the next smallest thing that I can test?
Yes.
And maybe keeping with the course analogy, maybe it's doing the first unit of your course or something like that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because, in some instances, to develop a product, particularly if it's a product that needs to be manufactured, maybe not necessarily, if it's a service-based product that you're packaging into a program that you can sell, a course, there's time, energy invested in that, isn't it? And so if you launch it like I've done with various programs, and what I thought was valuable, not necessarily, so I can see how valuable that would be. Around the value proposition with those couple of exercises, are there any other things that we can consider to really help us along that process? Or should we dive into the 2 tools for quickly assessing the business model before we even begin to build those products?
Well, so I think they basically tie into each other. A product isn't just the thing that you're selling, right? The artifact, the course, right? It's the intersection of the thing you're selling and the market, right? The product market fit. That's the essence of product development. It's not just, I have this idea, let me build this thing, because, until you figure out who your customers are, how you're going to make money, how you're going to distribute your product, everything around the thing you're building is your product. And part of that is figuring out your value proposition, but part of the rest of it is just as important as well. So a few years ago, I read this book called called Running Lean, which is a book that basically gives you a roadmap for implementing some of the lean startup principles. And the author developed this concept called the lean canvas. And I dug a little deeper, and it turned out that the lean canvas was really based on this bigger idea called a business model canvas. And I was like, oh, this sounds really interesting. So when it came time for me to launch Sherry, I wanted to make sure that I was really thinking about and being methodical about how this thing was going to generate revenue, how I was going to distribute it. So I walked through this series of exercises to build out the canvas. And I can't share, sort of diagram it for you, but I think what might be really helpful is to walk through basically the building blocks of my business, and then you can kind of see in practical terms how you can take, this core idea that you have and then turn it into an actual business.
Yeah, sounds great.
That sound good? You want to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it really is going to model it for people, and then they can apply that to their own idea or own business now too. So yeah, absolutely. Let's dive in.
Right. So the essence of it is, 9, I think it's 9 building blocks. And, what the way it's structured is, we can we can put links for show notes.
Absolutely.
Is, you should be able to fit this on one piece of paper
Mm-hmm.
and talk through, the business model with, your partners, your family, friends, basically anybody that you want to put this in front of to help validate your idea,
Mm-hmm.
even before you've actually built anything. So it's like, all right, I have this idea. Can I build a business around this? Well, this is the tool that you would use to help, get some sense of whether or not this idea that you have actually has legs. So the first part of it is identifying your customer segments.
Mm-hmm.
Who are you building this for? Who's paying for this thing? Who is going to get value out of the thing you're building? So for me, I'm really passionate about helping people who are actually people like yourself who
Mm-hmm.
are developing content-based products and want to get them in front of a pretty broad audience. So I started thinking, all right, who are my potential target customers? So I thought about bloggers, website owners, ebook authors, podcasters, and then I started to think a little bit bigger. I thought, all right, well, I could also offer this tool to social media agencies that they could then, use it to help develop their social media channels for their customers. Sales teams could be interested in this, and I kind of laid all of these out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought, all right, well, if I've social media agencies, that feels like a completely different customer segment than a podcaster, because they're like they have more than one client. Right. And sales teams, they feel a little different too. So I kept them, separately. So I basically created 3 groups, the sort of the content creator, that's the, ebook author, podcaster, that kind of thing. And then social media agencies and sales teams. And that, I went through, just kind of thinking about who it is that I want to sell to. And then from there, I started thinking about the value proposition.
Mm-hmm.
What's the core value that I'm delivering to my customers? What kind of customer needs am I satisfying? And I came up with this idea, and this word's terrible, but I'm going to just give you the sort of the raw deal here. My value proposition, as I wrote it, was to augment your content marketing strategy via shared content and generate leads from the content that you find and share.
Yeah.
Looking back, augment's terrible, right? But again, this was just I'm giving you like my internal documentation here.
Mm-hmm.
But so the idea is, you want to think about, what it is that you're offering that's going to deliver value, and you can, there's a whole series of questions you can ask yourself to help get into that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
What does it feel like to use your product? What does your product do? How does it work? What are the rational drivers for making a purchase? If this is a product that maybe already exists in the market, what are people doing? What's your customer segments doing already to
Mm-hmm.
serve this need? So basically the idea is that you drill into your value proposition by asking yourself a series of questions as they relate to your customer segment. And what's important is, when we have a customer segment, I was saying I have more than one, you want to go through that exercise for each customer segment, because you might actually have a different value proposition for one customer segment versus the other. And the idea is, when this is all done, you have this map that you can kind of then trace through and decide, all right, I want to follow this path instead of this path.
Mm-hmm.
So then from there, once you identify your value proposition, you want to think about how your company is going to communicate with and reach the customer segment in order to deliver the value proposition. So you want to think about your channels. So for me, my channels are website. I have this product on a website. I can do webinars. I can do direct outreach, although that doesn't really scale. When customers, or prospects come to my website, I offer chat support. That's a channel that I can reach them. Podcasting, being on a podcast like this is a potential channel to reach my audience. So when you're building out your business model, you want to think through, knowing who your customer segment is. How do they want to be reached? which channels work best? How much do these channels cost? So you want to think through, those kind of questions, to build out your channels. And then moving on from there, you want to think about your customer relationships. So, and what that means is, what kind of relationship does your customer segment expect you to establish? So if we were building out a business model canvas for our car dealership, that's a very high touch business. Although there are business models that have disrupted that, but it's a high touch business. So, your customer relationship might be more of a, high touch, hands-on concierge type service. For my business, the customer relationship it's self-service. It's a SaaS product. They can go and they can sign up. But then there is an aspect of personal assistance. So if customers have concerns, they can, talk to us via chat or email, and then we can kind of walk them through that process. So as you're thinking about your business, think about how you want to best reach your customers, and, through the channels, what kind of relationship do you want to have with your customers?
Yeah, makes sense. It's good stuff. I'm writing notes, by the way. If you see me looking down, I'm writing down notes.
Oh, awesome. Great. So the next, the next phase of building out your business model is kind of where the rubber hits the road. You want to start thinking about revenue. You've identified your customer segment. You've identified the value you want to offer them, and you've figured out how you're going to reach them. Now you got to figure out how you're going to make money. And, this is going to be different. This is even going to be different depending on your customer segments that you choose. So, if you've identified a couple different customer segments, try to think about, all right, how, is there a better cost benefit if I sell to one customer segment versus another? So, so for my business, I'm a software as a service. So for me, it's subscription fees and usage fees. So you pay a base monthly subscription, and potentially, depending on how much you use the service, there's going to be a usage fee. But the other thing that I'm considering is, if I'm looking at social media agencies as a customer segment, I might have a per seat revenue stream. Yeah. So the idea is just to kind of get all these things out on paper so you can start talking through the concept. Right now, it's not something I'm planning on doing, but it's by putting it out there, it gives you, kind of frames everything so you can think about it.
It's a possibility that you could down the track flesh out more and really put some thought into. But now, as you said, it's creating this framework.
Exactly. So then the next piece, there's only a few left, your key resources. So, every business needs, there's some set of resources that you need to make the business work. So, in your business, you're probably doing a lot of the content creation, I would imagine, correct?
Yes, very much so.
So
I can't hire anyone to stand in and interview on my behalf.
Right, exactly. But you might have in order to get your podcast out the door, you might have some VAs doing some work behind the scenes. So if your key resources basically are the things that you need in order to make your model work. They're not every single person that's going to do every single job. It's the things that if these things aren't there, your business model won't work. So you might say for you, your VAs are important, but if you didn't have your VAs, I imagine when you started, you were doing all the work, right? Right. So you might not need to put them as a key resource. So it really is business dependent. For my business, my key resources are business development. I have to establish relationships, marketing, because right now, it's a new product. Nobody knows about the business. And these are kind of obvious. Engineering, I got to build it, and product development, I got to make sure that I'm building the right feature set. Yeah. But that doesn't, that's not going to be the same for every business.
Yeah, no, what you just shared, just sharing, giving insights on what I did towards the end of last year around the key resources, I recognized, and actually it flows on from what I've been sharing on a couple of other shows from the Women in Leadership. I recognized I did a bit of a foresight, and I thought if I continue to go the way that I'm wanting my direction of my business to go and following this particular income model, I'm going to be so busy. It's not going to allow me time for my creativity. I love creativity, writing, that kind of thing, and being able to get in the zone. So what I recognize is, okay, what do I need to do? I need to release some of my work. So I focus just on 3 key things that I do: my writing, because I love writing, my podcasts, and then actually working with clients around training, coaching, helping them establish their podcasts and things like that. Those 3 things. Everything else gets outsourced. And then I already have my VAs, and then I realized I need an online business manager. At that time, I didn't know that there was that I needed that, but I recalled, going back on interviews that I've done, and I thought I need more than just a VA. Not that VAs, but it needed technical skill. She or he needed technical skill. And I was able to find someone going through exactly what you've said, because you follow the crumbs, if you will, around what do I need. And so rather than trial and error, and I was able to do that. And now I've got that set up so I can validate this is such an important process.
Yeah. And actually you hit on a really good point. So what you were talking about the desire to focus on, the creative aspects of your life, that really, I feel like just hearing you say that to me sounds like that's really speaking to your mission, why you're doing the things you're doing. And, everything that we're talking about related to your business model, should be anchored to your company's North Star. Right. Your mission, why you exist, your vision, what's the big idea? Where do you want to be? And if, for you, if part of that is to allow you time to focus on, the creative side of your business, then that's going to help shape your business model, because that's always going to be at the back of it should be at the forefront, right? You should always be thinking about building things that align with your vision and your mission.
Very important.
Yeah, I mean, it's important if you're a solopreneur to go through that exercise, and it's important if you're, Fortune 500 company. Yeah, they all have a North Star. The successful ones, anyway.
Yeah, they do. So that. I'm assuming that key resources, if I've got the number incorrectly, is number 6 on the list.
Yep, we got 3 more.
Fantastic. What's number 7?
So the next one. So the next one is your key activities. So, these are the things that are the most important activities you take under that are required by your value proposition. If you don't do these things, you don't have a business model. So for me, right now the key activities are channel development, getting the word out, getting traffic and things like that, and feature development. If I don't do those 2 things, because, I have a very, I'm taking the lean approach to building the product out. And, I have a very core set of features, and I have to be very systematic when I add new features. So those 2 are my key activities. So when you're thinking about your key activities, ask yourself what key activities does my value proposition require? What activities are important to my distribution channels, customer relationships, revenue stream, things like that. Again, the point of this is not to identify every single thing that your business does, but just the most important things that if these things didn't exist, you wouldn't have a business.
No. Okay. Yeah. So what's number 8? This is great stuff here, Joe.
Number 8, your key partnerships. So who are your key partners and suppliers? And what are the motivations for that partnership? So for me, I'm thinking about, since channel development is a key activity, I need to be thinking about who are potential people I can partner with in order to help develop channels. So my key partners right now are potential affiliates and potential joint venture partners. There's others that I can develop over time, but 1.0 of my business model, that's where I need to be focusing.
Yes.
And then finally, the last piece is the cost structure. Because you're all, all businesses incur costs. And in order to operate your business, you got to identify what the most important ones are. So for me, it's human capital. Basically, if I need to pay engineers to build stuff, it's advertising. If I want to, grow at a more accelerated rate, I might want to pay for advertising, and IT costs. The cost of actually running all of my infrastructure.
Yeah. I think this is brilliant. And I think, when you look at all of these 9 building blocks, they really are building blocks. They really are pillars. Going through this, and I would imagine you would have used this exact 9 building blocks for other ideas, other products that you've developed. And of course, you're using it with your current pursuit of, business product. Is there one? They're all important. I recognize that for sure. But would you say that there's one or more that really are pivotal? They're critical. And if you haven't spent time and energy on this, it's going to undermine all of the others, or not?
Absolutely.
They're all the same.
No. I think the most critical ones, I believe, are identifying what you're selling and who you're selling it to, your customer segment and your value proposition.
Okay. Yep. Which is why they're right up the top, 1 and 2.
That's why you start
with those. There's no point going down. Yeah.
Exactly. If you haven't really dug into that, that's where I think you're going to spend most of the time.
Yeah. And you know why I'm glad I asked that question is because if I recall conversations with a lot of people that I've met at networking events and at businesses who I know are struggling, I'm sure they cannot confidently say that they've gone through these 2 processes, because so many people are going to launch an idea and I'm going to get it out there to everyone. And because who is it suitable for? Well, anyone who can breathe, or anyone that,
that's the worst.
And I think that is such a critical aspect. And as you've just identified, if you don't have these 2 key building blocks, there's no point in building everything else out.
Yeah. So, when you think about, when you're thinking about a new product idea, you've never gone through this exercise as we've just laid it out, but where do you start? Do you start with, okay, I know who my customers are, or I know I have this idea, that'd be good to hear.
Yeah. Well, for me, I tend to now, if I look back, I've been in business for some time. I had a couple of decades in the career industry, and I would develop a product and think, I'll give you an example. A course that I had about women returning to the workforce. So what I did was I created a whole workshop because there was funding from the government. But what we didn't realize was that we could not sell that directly to the clients. We had to go through RTOs, which is registered training authorities, and there were barriers to them because a whole lot of the political kind of stuff. And so we recognized that there was a huge need, but for us, if we had gone through through all of these steps, we would have realized that we needed some key partnerships, and we needed to develop those first. Because by the time, and that takes time. And because we were starting from scratch, we would have then seen, okay, we need to focus on that first, because we could develop the product, and it's still sitting there. It's like a biz in the box. So yeah, I can see how absolutely crucial and valuable. But then having said that, we would have gone out and launched that and used it with our clients to get some feedback. Is this helpful for you? How can we change it? What can we add? All those kind of things. But I never really got to that point of being able to do that. So that's kind of a product which is sitting on the shelf and that hadn't really been launched, sadly.
Right.
Yeah. So, Joe, I'm just looking at the time. This has just been incredibly valuable. I know we've only scratched the surface for sure, but these are models, and we've heard, I'm sure, through listening to various podcasts and business, strategists, the lean approach, the lean principles, and the things that you're speaking about today, I think is really valuable, particularly because we are living in such an evolving, disruptive industry. There's new products and services coming to the market, and I think it really behooves us, or it's so important for us to go through these principles. Share a little bit about Sherry, particularly for listeners and viewers today, and how can they access the tool? How can they get in contact with you before we finish up the show?
Sure. I feel like I've laid it bare by giving you the business model. Sharry's a tool I originally built for myself because I like to, kind of scratch an itch. And the core concept of Sharry is that, in order to become be seen as a subject matter expert, I share a lot of content on social media. I find interesting articles about product management and product strategy. I would just share it on social media. But at the same time, I was trying to drive traffic back to my own website because I was doing a course on product strategy. And I was like, man, if I could figure out a way to leverage all this content that I'm sharing to drive traffic back to my website, I could, give the people that I'm sharing the benefit of them getting their content out there. And I would get residual benefit because, they would, potentially come back to my website as well. So that was sort of the seed of Sharry. So what Sharry will do is, suppose you want to promote this version, this latest episode of your podcast. So I imagine you share other people's content on social media.
Yes.
Right. So if you share other people's content on social media, rather than just like retweet something, if we'll use Twitter as an example, you could use a Chrome extension, the Sharry Chrome extension, to create a Sharry link, which is similar to a Bitly link. And the Sharry link, what it'll do is it'll create a distraction-free version of the article or the content that you want to share, and then allow you to put your call to action on the top of it. So your call to action could be, come check out the latest episode of my podcast with a button that would take them to the podcast download page, plus have the content attributed back to the original author
creator,
of the stuff that you've shared. So the author gets the benefit of their content being spread among your social media following, and then you get the benefit of potentially driving traffic back to your website.
Yeah, fantastic. And so how can people find out more about it? What's the link for everyone?
So if you want to find out more about it, go to www.getsharry.com, and you can sign up for a 30-day free trial and check it out.
Yeah, fantastic. And by the way, Joe, what you've shared today, I think, is absolutely valuable. I've taken lots of notes here on my page, which I tend to do. And then I realize, because I always take notes, it's my way that I tap into the expertise of other people. I'm always learning and growing. I said last year, I probably don't really have to go to many professional development events, only the ones that I can really see can help, because I'm constantly learning, and evolving. And then I realized, people are going to see me leaning down all the time. What am I doing? I'm actually taking notes because it's been valuable. So it really has. So what we're going to do is we'll put that link for Joe on our show notes, and go and click there. I'll share the notes with you too, the URL, because for those of you who are listening to the audio version of the podcast, you may not realize I'm about to share that we're actually streaming this live. We're doing a video version as well, and we will embed the video version in the show notes so you can get to see Joe speak as he's sharing his content. So ambitiousentrepreneurnetwork.com/AES219, ambitiousentrepreneurnetwork.com/AES219. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. It was great meeting you.
You've been listening to the Ambitious Entrepreneur Show, brought to you by BeTheDifferenceMovement.com. Changing the world one message at a time. Do you feel called to influence real change with your message? Join our supportive community of like-minded influencers, thought leaders, and disruptors at www.BeTheDifferenceMovement.com. That's BeTheDifferenceMovement.com.